Hi, welcome to the video. Just for some behind the scenes action that you may not have anticipated already this early on. Please ignore the mess, as this is not the first bit of the video that I shot, and I have already had to reorganize my house several times. As you may have noticed, half my kitchen is in my living room. But back to the main point, when it comes to depression, there are a lot of things that you can do in your personal life to help cope with that. And while some of these things are minor changes, and that's what we're going to be starting this video off with, is smaller things you can change within your life, and other things can be major things, and we're going to end the video off with that. But before we get to things you can change, it's important to ask yourself, why are you depressed? The reason for this is that there are two main thought processes for why someone would think that they're depressed. The first is people thinking that they're depressed due to a biological reason. Biological reason being like you think there's a chemical imbalance in your brain, or actually mainly that. And then the second is people who think they're depressed because of the way that they think/behave. After identifying which one you are, you can start to see how different treatment methods might work best for you. For starters, one study found that if you think that your depression comes from a biological reason, you're going to seek out and look for antidepressant medications and other treatment forms that affect your neurochemistry and that affect your neurochemistry. And well, this video is mainly going to consist of cognitive behavioral therapies. Some of these therapies have ways that they affect your neurochemistry, and so watching this video you might get the explanation behind a behavioral therapy that you could then use to help treat yourself if you do believe that it is a chemical imbalance in your brain. If you fall into the second category of thinking you're depressed because of the way you think/act, then this video is perfect for you, because these are all going to be behavioral things that you can do to change your life. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is diet, and we got a bit of a hefty first source that had a lot of good points. From a systematic review from the Poland's Department of Health, and basically every other department that Poland has that is intertwined with health, found that your diet can affect your mental health in many different ways. The first being, a proper diet has been found to have lower incidence rates of suicide and depression. The second reason is having sufficient levels of S-adenosylmethionine, or SAM for short, affects your body's ability to undergo methylation, and when the body has sufficient levels, an antidepressant effect is seen. The methylation part is important because when it comes to gene expression, methylation/demethylation is the turning off and on of certain genes. So, what I mean by that is, say one gene is currently being activated to release neurotransmitters to tell you, hey, you're sad, and you just don't have the nutrients to demethylate, or you don't have the nutrients to demethylate that protein in your gene, or you lack the nutrients to methylate the protein, or you lack the nutrients to methylate the proteins in the genes that tell your body to stop saying, hey, I'm sad. Zinc, moving on to the third thing this study found after that word vomit, was zinc has been found to be linked to cytokine activity, neurogenesis, and affects brain-derived neurotrophic factors. The next thing they found was a deficiency in vitamin B9, otherwise known as folic acid, depending on where you're from. Some places they call it both. Is linked to more severe symptoms of depression and a lowered response to antidepressants. So going back to the people that are looking for a biological reason, you can seek out antidepressants, but you got to be making sure that you're getting enough vitamin B9, otherwise the antidepressants might not even work. The fifth thing that this study, I keep calling it a study, but really it's a meta-analysis, was that vitamin D deficiency leads to higher risks of depression and schizophrenia, and has been linked to reduced severity of depression symptoms, irritability, fatigue, mood swing, sleep difficulties, weakness, and an inability to concentrate in adolescents diagnosed with depression. When it comes to using supplements, you need to be careful which ones you are taking, because while supplements have been shown in multiple studies to help alleviate symptoms of depression, taking multivitamins have not been shown to alleviate symptoms of depression. When it comes to multivitamin tablets, again, like I said, you do have to be careful on like which ones you're getting, and it's honestly just better to, if you're going to take supplements, to just find individual ones, take them at different times so that they're not blocking each other's absorption. And if you're like me and you bought one that has vitamins and nutrients in it that block the absorption of other vitamins and nutrients that are also in it, you have essentially just bought yourself expensive pee and like a few of the like 12 vitamins that you were supposed to be getting out of this actually getting absorbed. So they're not completely worthless, but you're getting nowhere near the effect that you were expecting. Which moves me on to my next point. When it comes to like a proper healthy diet, the best way to get these vitamins and nutrients is through a properly balanced diet. Luckily, the Understanding Nutrition textbook that I have uses the Australian Dietary Guidelines to lay out what a recommended daily diet is. And for starters, the banana here is supposed to be cut in half, but because it's not ripe, and I'm not going to eat an unripe banana tonight, pretend it is. So that half of the banana, and those 2 single servings of cereal, and that glass of 250 grams of milk is what a recommended breakfast would look like. And when it comes to diet, if you're going to be measuring it yourself, instead of just eyeing it up and guessing, I heavily recommend using metric units, because they are on a larger scale than imperial units are. And when it comes to larger numbers, we tend to struggle with understanding these large numbers. And so instead of using ounces to measure your food, use grams and use kilojoules to measure your calories instead of calories, because one article showed just how poorly humans are at understanding what large numbers actually mean. And the way that they did that, you can actually follow along and have a similar experience as to whether or not your mind is bad with large numbers. And so if we pretend that right here is where 1,000 is, and right here is where a billion is, point out where on this stick you should expect to find 1 million. Now, according to their article, half the people are going to put it about in the right spot, and the other half of the people are going to put it nowhere near the right spot. And the 2 most common spots that it would be placed in is you're going to have half the people put it right here, and the other half of the people put it about here. And when it comes to people who are correct, they're putting it over here. And the reason for that is 1 million is 1,000 times closer to 1,000 than it is a billion over here. So however much distance you put between 1,000 and a million, you need 1,000 times that distance to get to a billion. And so with that, they also found in that study that we tend to think of numbers on a logarithmic scale linearly. So once you move up another factor of 10, your mind is much more quickly being like, that is larger. So 250 grams of milk sounds a lot more than 8 ounces. And when it comes to kilojoules, versus calories, there's 4.2 kilojoules per calorie. So when it comes to your daily dietary recommendation, instead of 2,000 calories, it's 8,400 kilojoules, which is still in the same scale of 10, but when it comes to overeating, you need 1,600, my bad, I did the math wrong. It's 8,400, not 8,200. You need 1,600 kilojoules of excess food to get up to 10,000 kilojoules and go up a factor of 10. And so now, in order to go up that one factor, instead of eating an extra 8,000 calories or 5 times the daily recommendation, you have to eat 1,600 kilojoules, which is about a little less than 400 calories. So it's a lot easier for your brain to grasp that you are overeating using kilojoules than it is using calories. Moving on from breakfast, because we are still on that, we have our snack here. And the snack here consists of, again, the other half of the banana that you should have cut off of at breakfast. And then half a cup of salad vegetables, as they call them, basically anywhere but the US, I'm pretty sure, and Canada. And then in the US, we call them leafy greens. These are basically going to be anything that you could make a salad out of. It's going to be that. 1 serving of crackers, which, if you're eating saltines, is about 7. And then a tablespoon of butter. Assume you're supposed to be putting that on the saltine crackers. And then when it comes to lunch here, again, I did not want to eat all this food tonight, so that is why the tuna is still in its packaging. I actually found out that my bread is a little bit smaller than your average slice for serving size, so 3 slices of my bread is 1 serving, is 1 serving of bread, if the salad will stop falling off, and then a cup of salad vegetables and 1 slice of cheese, and then the pack of tuna is your lunch. And on top of that, if you're looking at the amount of lettuce that's on that plate and being like, I don't want to eat a whole salad for just my lunch, keep in mind, you could make a sandwich out of the portions that are in my hand right now, and throw some of that lettuce on there to make that portion smaller. And then we're moving on to your snack between lunch and dinner, and that should be a whole banana this time, moving up in the world, and about 25 grams of chocolate. And then moving on to dinner, I put an entire can of refried beans there. This diet calls for 1 cup of cooked vegetables, which is about 75 grams, which that can is 450 grams there, so it's a bit much. And then it's calling for a half cup of legumes, which beans. That can, having that half cup and that 1 cup of cooked vegetables being represented by it, is still about 200 grams too much of refried beans. And then 2 potatoes. They put 1 medium bread roll, but I put the sliced bread equivalent of that because I did not have a bread roll on me. 100 grams of lean red meat, and this is salami. Ideally, you'd want leaner meat than salami. And a single serving of some Greek yogurt, preferably, just because of the nutrition content of Greek yogurt versus regular yogurt. And when it came to everything that was on here, a couple of the things that are tricky about serving sizes in America is the fact that when it came to that chocolate milk, a single serving of Nesquik's, like 1-person bottle of chocolate milk, there's leftover of this. Like, I can pour more in. So you gotta keep in mind that a lot of American like single serving bottles are actually above the like what your single serving should be. And then on the flip side, products that tend to advertise that they're trying to be healthier tend to also make it so that their single serving portions are smaller. And the reason why that may be bad is you may be thinking that you're getting a full serving of yogurt and ending up being hungry and then eating another full serving, which in order to make this one serving, I had to take about 1 2/3 of another. So just be mindful of that as well. If you're looking at this diet and thinking, hey, that's kind of like a major shift from my current diet, like, how am I supposed to be able to make that, like, huge of a transition? I thought you said we're starting off with smaller changes. Well, we are, because it is not recommended to just immediately jump from an absolutely horrible diet or just, like, a diet that's very far off from this and go straight to this, because jumping straight to this, from personal experience and my foods and nutrition class, makes it so that you are less likely to sustain this diet. Also, didn't mention it previously, but the reason why this water bottle is here is because you should be drinking a lot of water throughout the day. Notice that there is not much liquids to be drank. That is because if you want water or any other forms of liquids for the recommended diet, you should be drinking water. And another thing about this dietary recommendation is that when it comes to discretionary servings, these are servings that you kind of earn if you're more active. So if you have a very sedentary lifestyle, the tablespoon of butter and the 2 pieces of chocolate, sorry, you lose out on those. Probably should have had that with the cracker. But also, if you're looking at this and you're saying, like, alright, I still don't think that this is going to be a sufficient amount of volume for, like, how much, just how much volume I need to fill my stomach. Another thing you can do with these discretionary servings is you could swap out this serving of discretionary servings, which is very small, for this serving of salad greens. It's a lot more volume, but if you're also in that camp of you didn't want to eat like a rabbit, you could still have more bread. You could throw on another 100 grams of meat. Though be careful with red meat because too much, even if you're using it to replace your discretionary servings, it's still bad. And basically you could just take your discretionary servings, and if you're like, I don't want butter with my crackers, but I don't mind having a salad right now, boom, you can have a really big salad with your crackers. Talk about the myth that a healthy diet is low in fats. While saturated fats are not healthy for you, unsaturated fats are good for you because your body does need fats in its diet, and that's why there's these things called essential fatty acids, which potatoes happen to be really loaded in, which are fats that your body cannot create on its own and needs that supplemented in. But in fact, one study from Slovakia, from just a bunch of organizations and people that I couldn't even attempt to say their names if I tried, so sorry, but I'm not going to. But there's a large link between people suffering from depression and those who consume omega-3 fatty acids to omega-6 fatty acids on a ratio of 15 to 1, as compared to those who consumed these fatty acids in a ratio of 2 to 1. And Omega-6 fatty acid, well, sounds like the same thing. It is an essential fatty acid. It's just one of those that is overly abundant in our diet. So we don't really need to strive to get the omega-6 fatty acid. The omega-3 fatty acid, one of the best ways to get it is through eating fish. So that's why this is still out. And in fact, when they were looking at the effects that it has on the brain, the omega-3 fatty acids also affect the levels of serotonin being released. They limit the regulation of the limbic system, changes the structure of the cell membranes in the brain, and a lack of omega-3 fatty acids have even been seen to reduce the metabolism of glucose in certain areas of the brain, which, for those of you that don't know neuroscience that well, means those areas of the brain just don't function as well as they should be. And the main way that they suggested to achieve a closer to a 2-to-1 ratio of omega-3 fatty acids to omega-6 fatty acids is how I said, oh, here's a 100-gram serving of red meat with that salami that I had out. You're only supposed to have about 2 to 3 servings per day of meats, and the recommendation, it's a pretty simple one. Replace 2 to 3 of those red meat servings per week. So that's not even an everyday thing. That's just every other day. Have fish. When it comes to trying to make a unhealthy diet like this healthier, the first thing that you should notice about this diet is the portion size is way out of control. Pretend there's a full pizza, but you take out the 2 slices, so now you're only going to eat your 3/4 pizza. But then for one of those slices, replace it with one of the servings that you're nowhere near getting enough of. If you compare this single serving of vegetables to the amount of vegetables on this pizza, well, I think eating the whole pizza got me the same serving as what's on this plate. And now you're just that much closer to a healthier diet. When it comes to the Mountain Dew, replacing the 4 2-liters with the equivalent number of cans would be a good thing, just to remind you of how much you're actually drinking. And when you do the math, 4 2-liters is about equivalent to as many cans as you see here. I really wish that didn't rip that way. Minus this one. So 23 cans of soda versus 4 2-liters is a lot more of a noticeably bigger problem. And when it comes to reducing the amount of Mountain Dew that you're drinking, same method that I'd recommend with the pizza is just reduce it by a certain number of cans. Though, now moving on to exercise, the Australian Dietary Guidelines do have recommendations as to how much exercise you should be getting within the week. And so when it comes to aerobic exercises, this is going to be about 5 to 7 days per week. You should be getting about 30 minutes of aerobic exercises. Then when it comes to resistance training, so just lifting, squats, any forms of calisthenics, you should be doing about 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions on each of these, and you should be having 2 to 3 days. And that's 2 to 3 days involving every single major muscle group. So if you split your workout into legs and upper body, and one day you do legs, the next day you do upper body, then that's going to be considered one day. But if you do full body workouts every time that you do strength training, one day is one day. If you split it up into a third of the muscle groups, a fourth, etc., you get the picture. And then the last major form of exercise that you should be getting within the week is flexibility training, which is most commonly yoga and stretching. So you should be doing that about 2 to 7 days a week, and you should have 2 to 4 repetitions of 15 to 30 seconds per muscle group. When it comes to exercise, something as simple as going for a walk 3 times a week for 15 minutes has been shown to have positive impacts on people's symptoms of depression. On top of that, more research has shown that 20 to 40 minutes of light leisurely activity, like I'm doing now with walking, has been seen to have as positive impacts on people's depression as going to therapy once a week. Now, looking at the reasons why exercise helps improve your mental health, because the first thing that was noted was that exercising releases endorphins, which in turn have a similar effect as opioids and on the body. As well as that, aerobic exercise has been shown to increase individuals' mitochondrial counts, which in turn has effects on the body that essentially slows down the aging process. It's also been seen to activate a protein within the brain called mTOR, which, when ketamine is used as an antidepressant, activates this same protein. Exercise has also been seen to increase the neurotransmitter levels within individuals. More specifically, we're talking serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline are increased, all of which are neurotransmitters used by your brain to reward yourself and makes you happier. On a psychological level, it gives people a sense of accomplishment knowing that they just finished a workout, and it can distract people from their stressors in their day-to-day life. Another thing you can do at home to help alleviate the symptoms of depression is to go outside. One systematic review of a horticulture therapy cited that just being outside is good for people's mental health. So, yeah. Next time someone tells you to go outside and touch grass, they might just be looking out for your mental health. Lastly, of the smaller changes you can make in your life, volunteering around the community is another thing that has been seen to reduce symptoms of depression. In a meta-analysis, it's been found to reduce feelings of burnout and emotional exhaustion, increase things like purposefulness and meaningfulness, not mindfulness. In the meta-analysis, 39 out of 41 independent studies looking at impacts on depression found it helped reduce symptoms of depression. On a similar scale, it was found to boost people's self-esteem and pride. It was even found that volunteering led to individuals living longer, though that was more so to do with the fact that, for the same reason that religion tends to increase people's lifespan, and that a lot of people who volunteer are older individuals, and older individuals going out into groups of people and socializing tend to talk about things that other people chime in with hey, that's something you should have a doctor check out. And personally, when it comes to volunteering, I like to donate blood to the Red Cross. I like it because when it comes to trying to lose weight, if you have a rest day where your muscles are recovering from your workout, your bones can still burn a lot of energy by replacing the blood that you've lost/donated. On top of that, wasn't using my Netflix subscription enough to warrant having it, so I canceled it. And now whenever something comes out on Netflix and I want to watch it, I just have to go donate blood to be able to watch it. And then something recent that changed at the Red Cross is they have loosened their restrictions on who can donate blood. So if you are someone who is part of the LGBTQ plus community and you were formerly told that you couldn't donate, you now might be able to. And another restriction that they lightened up on is if you lived in the UK during the 1980s, you might now be able to donate blood as well. Moving into larger changes in life that you can make to help cope with depression at home is start growing potted plants around your apartment if you don't have room for a garden, or if you do have room for a garden, start gardening. If you don't think you have the capability of taking care of potted plants, or you don't really have the best sunlight throughout your apartment, an alternative to potted plants would then, it's an alternative to potted plants, but it still is a potted plant, is succulents. Growing these have been shown to work. There was a meta-analysis done to see if there was any actual benefit for treating depression in patients that were participating in horticulture therapy, which horticulture therapy is essentially just therapy where you garden, and gardening is your therapy. And it found that there was a significant positive effect on people's depression who participated in this style of therapy. When it comes to another major change you can make to help with depression, adopting a religion or practicing your current one more is something that you can do. A meta-analysis on the subject found that Christians tend to have greater hope, increased sense of meaning in life, higher self-esteem, more optimism, a greater life satisfaction. They have lower rates of suicide and drug abuse. And in that same meta-analysis, it was found that there were some studies that had found similar results in other religions that weren't Christianity, but there wasn't enough evidence to conclude that they had the same benefits. Another major change that you can make for your mental health is getting an emotional support animal. Personally, I took advantage of that with this guy. I had to move the table out of the way to make sure that you could see him. But a meta-analysis looking at the different impacts of pet ownership found that overall ESAs are an effective strategy to aid individuals with mental health problems. When it came to the studies looked at in the meta-analysis, there were several on both sides of the aisle stating one side of the aisle being that they are an ineffective way, and some even came to the conclusion they were actually detrimental to mental health. And then there were several more on the side of that they are an effective way to treat mental health. And hey bud. Yeah. So to this note, the authors of the meta-analysis noted that, didn't realize how much I said noted there, that the most common mediating factors as to whether or not they are effective were the type of pet you get, because if a dog's going to be the best thing for you, getting a horse just isn't going to help. The number of pets you have, how how friendly you perceive your pet to be, and the attachment to the pet. Several studies in this analysis found that while depression levels were similar in individuals with pets versus individuals without pets, they also found that pets likely enhanced quality of life because significantly more people with pets tend to be people who participate in social exclusion compared to those without pets. Another major change you can make for treating your depression at home is getting sober. A study conducted by the American Psychological Association looked at the different interactions between depression, alcohol use, and substance use, and it found that these three things interacted with each other a lot. The first interaction of note that they found was depression did not have a significant relationship with alcohol use or substance use at ages 17 to 22. It did, however, have a significant relationship where people who were depressed at 22 saw higher rates of substance use at age 23. Then when it came to substance use, they saw a similar trend in that it did not have a significant relationship with the other two of drinking and depression until people turned age 23. Meaning that substance use at age 22 saw higher rates of both depression and drinking. Alcohol, on the other hand, saw a significant relationship between the use of alcohol at the age of 17 and whether or not someone would end up being depressed at the age of 22, or if they were using drugs. It, however, no longer had a significant relationship with depression for people that were consuming alcohol at 22 and whether or not they were depressed at age 23. When it came to longer term, major depressive disorder was looked at in the 28 to 30-year-old age group because this was a longitudinal study. And there was a significant relationship with substance use and depressive symptoms at age 23 to having major depressive disorder at age 28 to 30. And while earlier it was mentioned that alcohol no longer saw a significant relationship with depression at age 23, it does have, through the fact that it can cause depression earlier on, or it can lead to substance abuse. Those two things can then later on lead to more depression and major depressive disorder at older ages. Lastly, if you made it this far and decided that none of the previous methods are something that you would want to try, then that's probably a good sign that you should try therapy. And while it is an uncomfortable experience to start going to therapy, there's a reason it exists. A common reason for people not going to therapy when they should is that they tell themselves that their problems aren't bad enough to warrant going to therapy, or they make up some other excuse. While going to therapy is great, one common problem people run into is not being able to find the right therapist for you. And an important part of therapy is making sure that you are going to the right therapist. And while it would be great for there to be one standard metric for what success is to see which therapy clinic is the best, there isn't. Instead, there's 8. And of these 8 metrics, a study found that there were 3 groupings of these metrics that made comparing them to each other more reliable. And in all 8 of these metrics, patients' scores on the PHQ-9 test, which is a standard test used to score people's depression, is the test that they use to determine whether or not they were successful. And the first group of metrics that were reliable to compare to each other were clinics that define their success rates as an absolute decrease in a score of 5 or more points, scoring below 10, or a 50% or greater decrease in score, or a score below 10. The second group being clinics that defined success as a 50% or greater decrease in score, a 50% or greater decrease in score that puts your post-therapy score below 10, an absolute decrease in score of 5 points or more and a score below 10, and lastly for this group, a more than 50% decrease in score with an absolute decrease of at least 5 points. And then lastly, the third group is just clinics that define success as a score of less than 5. So, if you had a bad experience with how one clinic performs and want to search for a better clinic, and you want to use that first clinic as a baseline to make sure that you are getting a better clinic, then you just need to make sure that you're comparing clinics that use success metrics in the same grouping. One potential aid to mental health that I looked into for this video was that of moving. I had to remove this from the section that is actually something that's good for mental health, because when researching this strategy, I found that a study in Scotland looking into this found that there was no significant difference in change in mental health when comparing those who moved to those who did not move. Within their study, they did also group participants' households into 3 subcategories: adults with children, adults only, and the elderly. When looking at these results by housing group, they did find that houses with children saw beneficial change in all measured categories when compared to the control group. Adult-only houses saw a positive change in half of their mental health markers and a negative change in the other half of the mental health markers. Lastly, when looking at changes in mental health markers of the elderly, when moving, they found that their mental health had only seen negative impacts when compared to the control group. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this video helps you in some way, shape, or form, or at the very least gives you the nudge that you needed to actually seek out help through therapy.